part with our stuff because we are attached to our stuff, whatever that stuff may be. It might be our money or whatever. I remember one time somebody gave me a cockatiel, and obviously being a 7-year-old kid or something like that, I don't know how old I was at the time, somewhere in that age range, 7, 8. I was quite happy that I got this cockatiel. So I was walking around the house singing, "All to Jesus I surrender." I think it was that night, and my mom said, "If God asked you to give Apollo back to God, would you do that?" And that was like a heart blow. I love this cockatiel. First day having it, and she's already saying, if God wanted you to give that up now, you know, it's not like I'm going to take that cockatiel, put it in the offering plate. I don't think the pastor would be too happy. But, at that point, that was probably the most important thing, in the eyes of a 7-year-old, having this, bird. And, if God wanted me to give that up, would I truly give that up to him? And as you get older, they usually get more expensive, your vehicles, if you have a vehicle you love. For some reason, I looked at Mr. Kohler. I have no idea why. but what, your house, whatever it is, if he asks you to offer that up to him, would you be willing to do that? Just like with Ananias and Sapphira, if I'm saying that right. When they said, "Oh, we're going to give this property, this investment to the Lord, we're going to give it all to him." God didn't demand them to do that. But yes, it was a great thing to do to, help the church out with whatever it was. It was a great thing to do, but it wasn't a commandment of God. It wasn't they weren't robbing God by not giving it to him. Let's go over to Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 8. Isaiah 55 verse 8. Says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And the thing whereto I sent it." So we look at this, and isn't it so true about the snow, the rain, or whatever it is? Of course we live in, I was going to say Northeast Ohio, but most of you don't live in Northeast Ohio. You live in Greenville, Pennsylvania. But we see of the snow and all the good things that does of killing off a portion of the insects or whatever it is. Now, I was working around the yard and I pulled back this tarp and there was this great big, I think it was a European hornet, sitting there, and I thought, oh, it's dead. The more I worked, I looked over and that thing started to move. Somehow he survived the winter. I don't know how. He didn't survive much longer, but he survived the winter. If I can take care of those things, because all they did was terrorize us last year. It was awful. But anyhow, how insects can survive something like that, I don't know. It truly is amazing. But we see the rain and all that is for a purpose, and just like it is in our life, of God blessing us with things in our life, and it's all for a reason, it's all for a purpose. And either we complain so much, we complain when it's too hot, when it's too cold. I complain more when it's cold than too hot. But we complain about, when there's not enough rain, when there's too much rain. And yes, it would be nice to have, sunny, 70 degrees, rain maybe twice a week. Not like a slow drizzle, like just a downpour for 15, 20 minutes and then it lets up. Yes, that if you can find a spot like that, let me know. I think so. You just said it's Florida, but you also have to deal with too much rain with heavy winds at some points. But that if you can, there's not that ideal spot. Every place has its setbacks. Of course, some places are better than others, and but God has a plan for everything, and He says in verse 8, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, saith the Lord. Isn't it so true as we see 2020 vision at its best? If we have 2020 vision, that's the best we can have. Some of us don't even have that. I don't even know what I have. But we don't see things as God sees them. We don't see the outcome that God has planned or the whatever's there. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5. One flip and I was there. That doesn't happen very often. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5. Says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thine ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So it talks about it shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. So we'll stop there. But, another very common verse of trust in the Lord with all thine heart. I wonder if we could take, the part of our heart that we have dedicated to the Lord and the part of our heart that we have dedicated to ourselves and our own wants, our own needs, how much, would be that? I wonder if it would be like 95% for us, 5% for God, or what it would be. I was talking in the jail about, Demas, how he had forsaken Paul and loved this present world. And in Paul's eyes, I truly wonder, what Demas had forsaken Paul for to leave for the world. It was probably like something of Demas was going to get killed for his faith, and he recanted his faith or something like that. Because for him to walk around with Paul for 10 years, for him to be faithful to Paul for all those years, it's not like he was, a quitter. He was obviously very strong. For even Paul to choose him, to follow him around, to be his, help with that, he would have to be somebody strong in the faith. And so for at least 10 years, he followed Paul around, and he was faithful to the cause of Christ. And of course, we don't know what happened, but he forsook Paul, loving this present world. And he would probably be a wonderful teacher nowadays because of the difference in what was required in his faith compared to our faith. And although he was somebody who left Paul and departed from the faith, he would probably be somebody we'd all look up to today because times have changed so much. They say Christians are like 40 years behind the world, something like that. What we preach against now, in 40 years it will be accepted. And are Christians. And you can even see with the Amish. It might be longer, I don't know what it is. You can see with the Amish, I can remember a couple years ago, no mowers, no whatever. Our neighbor, he needed a skid steer for his business. He needed to put in his driver's name and to have to stay at his house, the driver's house or some, he wasn't supposed to have that. And over time, you can see, they were allowed to borrow their neighbor's mower. And then it was soon they were able to own the mower, and then the weed whackers were before the mowers. But it keeps progressing of their, whatever they want to call it, staying away from the world, their connection to the world. It keeps, becoming more and more connected, and soon it'll probably be they're allowed to have antique cars, just not modern-day cars. It has to be over 30, 40 years old, something like that, because they have ways to make everything excused. And that's what we do in our life, even though, we look at that and we laugh at something like that. In our life, I heard a preacher say, obviously I wasn't around, that when the Beatles were around, that wire-rimmed glasses were preached against. And of course there's a reason that he would preach against that, because you don't want to go around looking like the world, and that's the fashion of the world at that time, so that's justified. But I don't think he would find somebody with wire-rimmed glasses and say, oh, you look like the world, that because times have changed. And So, of course, we shouldn't look like the world, like I was saying. We should have that, we shouldn't have our focus on the world. We shouldn't want to every new fashion, every new design, which is going to be outdated in a couple months. You have a new phone release. I think the newest one's the Galaxy, whatever it is, S10. I have no idea. Not a Galaxy person. Uh, but you have that release. You have Apple. They'll come out with, I don't even know what the last one was, the iPhone 10 XR or something like that. And in October, you know what's going to be coming out, the iPhone 11 or whatever it is, whatever the newest release is. For that to just be outdated in another year, it's usually around October that they come out with a new release. I got the iPhone 8 the day that the iPhone 10 was released because it had only been released for 2 months before it had been released with knowing that the next iPhone 10 was, going to be released 2 months later. And that's going to be the way with technology. It's going to be the way with fashions. I look at my parents' wedding photos and my mom's hair. Of course, that's not around today, thankfully. but fashion's going to keep changing. And we're not. Okay, I need to block her out now. Fashion's going to keep changing. We're not going to be able to keep up with it. We're not going to be able to look like the world, no matter how hard we try. There's, birds of a feather are going to flock together. We are not of this world, so we can't be a part of the world. We can't be the odd kid who's, doesn't belong there, because truly, we are not a part of this world. So why do we desire so much to be like it? Why do we desire so much to bring into our lives to affect us in our lives? We're separated from that. When we get saved, that's supposed to be taken out of our life. And of course, I love cars. I long for a certain type of car. If you know me, you know what that is. But as much as I want that, yes, it's not a sin to have it. If I go about it certain ways, it could be a sin. If I make that an idol in my life, if I put that in front of God, yes, that is a sin. It's absolutely not a sin. There's times where we need to sit back. There's a time for everything. There's a time where after you work so hard for so long, it is nice to have something that you can enjoy. That's, where it doesn't feel like you're working for somebody 40, 50 hours a week and you don't have anything in return. Yes, of course, that's nice to have. But people, they put their sights so much on the world that consumes them so much that it truly does consume them. They have no time for anything else besides all their wants, what they think are needs, but it's truly not, because they get so involved in the world. And Christ says, like we started in Matthew chapter 7, about the foundation to build upon. What is our foundation going to be upon? Is it going to be upon our wants and the get rich quick philosophy of, you get those ads on YouTube of want to know how to make $1 million in 3 weeks? Of course I do, but your way's not going to work for me. It may have worked for you, but people are consumed. You see people who get involved in the stock market, and it's up one day, down the next day. I was talking to somebody, and about my 401k, I have no idea to know what's going on with it. I lost the papers to sign into the account and whatever. He said, yes, you need to figure that out so you can see what's going on. But he said, don't get involved in that, because you'll look one day, you'll be all happy because it's up so much. You'll look the next week and it'll be down so much. He said, just kind of set it aside and, let it figure itself out. Let the stock market, all that stuff. That's why I'm not investing in it. I just say, take so much of my pay. You take care of it. Because some things it just boggles my mind of, yeah, these people all crazy about Bitcoin and whatever. I don't care how much you try to explain Bitcoin to me. It makes absolutely no sense. It sounds like the kid's biggest version of Monopoly or some kid's biggest game that they ever came up with. I can't understand it. So just like God's thoughts are above our thoughts, some people's thoughts are above my thoughts. I am a simple person. I don't need to get involved in that stuff. But we can get focused on stuff like that. You can get consumed by becoming a miner of Bitcoin or whatever it is. That's a term I don't understand right there, what those people do. But we can get consumed in the lust of our flesh, and it will consume us to the point where we think, we got to have this, so it's going to make our life so much better. But in return, all it does is put a servant of somebody else. So let's go to Proverbs chapter 37, verse 4. 37, verse 4. Psalms. He knew something. First of all, Psalms 37, verse 4 is a very common verse, so there should be a reason I should go to that. And second of all, Proverbs doesn't have 37 chapters. So there should be a couple red flags there. I was at Psalms 37, verse 4. I just assumed you could all just know what I was talking about. Psalms 37, verse 4. He said, David says here, he says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy ways unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass." So, going by this verse, doesn't that mean that if I put 40, 50 hours a week into doing the work of the Lord, doesn't that mean that I'm going to have the house I want, the car I want, the job I want? Absolutely not, because when we delight ourselves in the Lord, he's going to change our desires. It truly is something when the more you try to please God, your desires change. Your desires go from the want of your flesh and all the things that you desire now in your carnal state to the desires of Christ, where your desire changes for souls being saved, for the world being reached, for missions, whatever it is. Your desires are going to change when we delight ourselves in the Lord. And David should be the prime example that he had everything at a certain point in his life that anybody back then could want. He had the wives anybody could want. He had the houses, the power, whatever it was. He had the Lord on his side. He was victorious in battle. And he still had to humble himself at points in his life. God made sure that he was humbled, especially when he sinned against God. He thought he could do things on his own with numbering Israel, going against the commandment of God, and God judged him greatly for that, judged Israel greatly for that, because of one man's decision. And it's not like it was a sin, numbering Israel. You can see... I can't remember who it was, but he was told, get up and number Israel. It wasn't a sin. It was because he transgressed the command of the Lord. The Lord said, just don't worry about how many mighty men you have. Don't worry about how many servants you had. Just follow me. And he wanted to get his eyes, just like we do, on the world, where he puts his eyes on how many warriors he has. I hate saying that word, warriors, because of Golden State and everything. But he puts his eyes on how many people he had to back him up in battle when he goes to battle. And God said, don't do that. And he lost many people because of that. And that's how we are in our life, as God tells us not to do something, and we just turn around and do it. And then we wonder why we need to pay the consequences thereof. When God has a special way of humbling a proud person, just like he says in, I believe it's Proverbs. I can't remember the spot, but pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. God has a way of humbling somebody, and it's not our job to, before they hit, to run, be like that. If you look at gymnastics of the people who go on the trampolines, you have that spot or so. If they fall, they can stop that fall or throw a cushion underneath them, whatever it is. It's not our jobs to be that person while somebody's running away from God to be running around with a cushion saying, "Oh, don't fall here, I got you. Don't hurt yourself," because we just need to leave it up to God, because in doing so, we might lighten the blow, but in return, the whole thing that they went to was in vain, because God wasn't able to get their heart, get their what he was trying to do through that, because he has them going through that for a reason. And when we run around trying to stop their fall, trying to help them, God can't. We're hindering the work of God. We can't stop the work of God. God knows everything. I mean, it's not like we can outdo God in our knowledge, but we can hinder the work of God. Just like God has a way of reaching a lost person, and that way might be through you. It probably is through you. You have a specific mission field in your life that nobody else has. And it's the best way to reach those people is through you. But if you don't do it, is God, let those people die and go to hell? They might, because we didn't do our job. But he's also going to have other roads and avenues that they're going to hear the gospel. He's not going to leave any man without the gospel. So just like that, it's our job to do it. But he says, if we hold our peace, the rocks can cry out. And yes, it would be an amazing thing to, hear, absolute truth from a rock. That'd be amazing. But he uses us for his reason. Why, I don't know. The rock could not stutter. It could say, 10,000 times like I'm told I do. But anyhow, a rock could do a better job than me in speaking. It could probably do a better job than, Brother Curlin or whoever we hold up as a great teacher. He could do, just like he used Balaam's donkey, he could use other avenues, but he chooses to use us, and we should use that privilege that he gives us, because it truly is a privilege. All right, let's pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you in prayer, and we're thankful for the day that you've given to us, for the week that you gave us. For Lord, that you would be with the services today, that you would work in them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.